Hello and welcome to another Starcraft 2 beta commentary. I am your host Witty and I will be talking you through this 1v1 game on the map Lost Temple. It's on the Platinum League. It's between myself, Witty, as the red Protoss versus Retuh as the blue Protoss. Now in this game, it's a mirror match. So usually what seems to work against Protoss players is basically a lot of zealots and a lot of sentries, and then work your way up to Colossus. Neither Protoss players often tend to get air, at least not from my experience, so yeah, don't do that until it becomes, or some pro manages to make it work basically, because from what I've seen so far I have not seen air versus air Protoss games go down well. It's mainly ground units, so you stick to the ground. You might be able to get a couple of air units such as Phoenixes or Void Rays to take down the Colossus, because they can hit Colossus because they're so tall. Even though they're a ground unit, they're so tall that they're allowed to be hit by air units. So if you get air units for that purpose, it's not necessarily that bad a thing. But you don't want to invest in too much air, because once all of his Colossus are gone, what's your air going to do? Exactly. Exactly. You got to think about these things. So as we can see, a mirror match. There's not really that much different going on, apart from our builds, or rather how we've built. I've built my build on the ramp. I like to get a nice little block here, leave a zealot here or a probe here if I really want to stop them from getting into my base, but I'm not too worried since this is a mirror match. I'm not too concerned. I don't think he's going to be able to work out what I'm going to do anyway, just yet. He'll just have to go by his own experience of Protoss versus Protoss to know what I'm going to do, but I've got my scout in his base. Usually the best place to scout is the nearest place. These two, the south and the east, are closest to each other, and the north and the west are closest to each other. So if you're on the east, you scout to the south first, and vice versa. Same goes between north and west, just so you know. He's gone to the north. Not saying that was his fault. I mean, he couldn't possibly know that I wasn't there, but obviously I've got the advantage of seeing what's going on in his base. Seeing that he's got the gateways here, I'm feeling a bit confident about that, because I'm not keen on that. I much prefer my build where you block the ramp at least with a couple of buildings. You can build the rest in your main base if you're really worried about Reapers getting in or air getting in. That way you can focus cannons inside, you know, all your buildings and put cannons together, rather than investing cannons on too much onto the right and also into your main, because that just spreads them out and makes them, you know, less useful. So at least have a couple of buildings to block the ramp for early game. You might lose these buildings between it versus a good player, but as long as they're there early game to help slow down the enemy, it's only going to do you a favour. So as you can see, he's going for a cybernetics core. I believe I should have done the same. Yes, I have. The first thing I go to research is warp gate. This will allow me to basically warp in units that can be warped in anywhere between a pylon's radius. As you can see here, when I click on the pylons, you've got the little grid bit, so I can warp in there. Or with a warp prism, which is an air unit that you get from the robotics facility, which I have just put down right now. You can use it to either scout around the warp prism, but it's mostly used for actually transporting units. Also transports units, and also you can turn it into prism mode. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but when it goes into this mode it basically becomes a pylon with less radius, probably about half the radius where I'm sort of like scanning around with my cursor at the moment, and you can teleport units from the prism. It's like a portable pylon basically. Has its uses, but it's most useful for getting onto expansions on the islands. You may not be able to see clearly from the mini-map, but these two bits, the northwest and the southeast, are both islands. You can't get there with ground units. You have to use air. So it's always useful to try and get a warp prism, here it is, and bring it over here if you're going to expand, or take your natural expansion. But since my natural expansion is facing him, he's closest to my natural expansion, as you can see. Comes straight out of his ramp, straight towards it. I'd rather not take my natural expansion if I can help it. And the same goes for him, because if I'm going to attack him, the first thing I'm going to come across is his natural expansion. Easy. Whereas over here, if he was on the west side, the natural expansion is quite far away. And the same for especially a cross map. It's definitely quite far away, so it's possible, it's more likely to be able to get away with that. As you can see, I've only got the one cellar here. That was just to simply block between here, and the rest of the units I'm getting are sentries. Now the sentries are key because you want force field to block this ramp. He's got a larger army than me, as we can see. He's got 5 zealots and 2 sentries. 3 sentries now. I've got 2 zealots and 3 sentries. So if he went for the attack, he'd be able to beat me. Unless I manage to put down force fields to block my ramp. This will give me 15 seconds of time. That will buy me more time to buy units, to bring units into the field. That way he's got a longer time between getting his units over to my space, whilst I can carry on porting units whilst the force fields are up. So, you know, with at least 3 sentries, I'll buy myself 45 seconds. 45 seconds with 2 gateways is easily a couple of stalkers, you know, a couple of sentries, maybe even an immortal. So, you know, when you put that into perspective, the force field is something you really want to focus on getting early game. So now I'm starting to save up on my Thespian gas and use the rest of my minerals for a cannon. So forge, I also want to get ground weapons at some point, because that's always worth doing, especially in a mirror match, because if you're going to have equal forces going against each other, say 5 zealots, 5 sentries, both players have them each, but one player obviously has the upgrade, ground weapons, who do you think is going to win? Bearing in mind they both micro exactly the same way, you know, you can't always put that into it, but obviously the ground weapons in the mirror match is going to be most effective against any other combo, except for maybe against Zerg. But even though Zerg aren't in this game, I'm just going to mention it, you want to get level 1 of the ground weapons against Zerg, because that will allow you to 2-hit, I think, or 3-hit, whatever it is, 2-hit Zerglings. Whereas otherwise, if you didn't have that upgrade, it would leave the Zerglings with just about enough HP to survive another couple of hits. So every little helps, basically. So a lot of Protoss players get the first upgrade against Zerg. So as we can see, he's just sitting in his base. I've got myself a little observer. I've been having a look around him. I'm just going to switch to his view. F2. That'll do it. No, he doesn't have it. Fair dues. I was just going to see. This is one of his mistakes so far, is he has not made an observer. An observer is the first thing you want to get out of a robotics facility. Absolutely. Now, I know that the game has gone on quite a while. I could expand, I've got the minerals for it, but if I expand and any attacks, I've lost. So I'm not going to take that risk, especially whilst I can keep an eye on him the whole way through. I'd rather take my chances of expanding on the islands. That's what's going on through my mind at the moment. Here he has his observer. He did make one eventually, but it just got destroyed, so that was unfortunate for him. He needs to be a lot more careful with that. The reason why it got destroyed is he brought it too close towards his cannon, which can see invisible units, which then allowed my sentries to bring it down. Didn't stand much chance there. So I got myself a robotics bay, and now I'm pumping out Colossus. As you pump out the Colossus, you want to get this ability here that I didn't quite show you in time, but it is very, very good. It increases their range by, I think, 2 or 3. So let's have a quick look. Yeah, his range is 9 at the moment. Before it's either 6 or 7. So you want to try and get that, because that allows the Colossus to sit miles back in the battlefield. Like, the battle could be going on here and they can hit units from like this far away with that new range upgrade. It costs a fair bit, but it's worth it. So he's also doing the same, getting himself Colossus. He's also doing something slightly different to me, which is getting Void Rays, air units. They are effective against Colossus because they can hit them. Obviously, air units can usually hit ground, but even the Phoenixes can, which are pure anti-air units. They can also hit Colossus, because earlier I explained that Colossus are so tall they can get hit by air. As you can see, I got fortunate there, but I did the right thing. I scout in this pattern. It's a lot easier to scout if he's on the right hand side, because I just send a probe here, and then I send him to shift patrol here, 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 and here, and he'll go back and forth in that pattern until he spots something, which he has done this time. A nice nexus. So whilst I'm not actually going to go out of my way to stop that, I am aware of it. Now what I could have done here is actually, in hindsight, so I think I was concentrating too much on getting 2 expansions at this point. As you can see, very sneaky with this warp prism that I've used. Sent him over with 2 probes, drop 1 probe off here, drop 1 probe off there, build a couple of nexuses. Because if I can spare anything, it's minerals at the moment. It's Thespian gas that I'm holding on to dearly, and that's more or less the reason why I'm actually getting expansions, and why a lot of people get expansions. Unfortunately, I was a bit reckless with my warp prism here. I shouldn't have left him there. Now, I'm fully aware of that nexus. Now, what I should have done is I should have turned my warp prism into a pylon, basically. Still can't remember the ability name. and then warped in a couple of units, just say zealots or something, just to nail that Nexus a bit, just to make him panic a bit about it. You'd probably be able to stop him with the the void ray, but it would still be a nice little touch to sort of keep the pressure on him. So that's something I could have done better, but never mind.